the beginning of the conversation. So my name is Evgenia. I'm an artist, poet. I live in Portugal. I work here, but I'm also working internationally. I am primarily, let's say, a visual artist and a poet that combines spoken word and visual art in calligraphy. I have lived in many places in the world and moved to Portugal a few years ago. And my current work is thoroughly dedicated to a project called Eternal Forest, which is um, a dream, a vision to create a movement in the world of protected forest sanctuaries that are created through art and artists who are passionate working with ecology and supported in the long term protected by the communities around the world. So it's a gift for the
Yeah.
future generations.
Yeah.
That's probably the best self introduction I
You
can
know,
give to myself.
yes, this is actually something that we have not prepared, but at the same time, I feel like the more people you meet, the more you kind of have it in like few sentences. This is who I am.
Yes.
And I come from a recruitment background, so I ask this question a lot, and
So I
I find
passed the interview.
I would say so. I would say so because I think what is very important, at least for me, with people, especially if I'm choosing people to work with, is ability. Okay, get to the point, but make it, make it nice. Take me through the story, but get to the point. I don't need to know every detail. I want to ask you about those details, right? So,
Sure.
Eternal Forest is where you sort of finished. And this is something that on the stream before you joined, I was already, the website is something that I'm looking at right now. And I've noticed first and foremost, 2019, is that when the story started? Or take me through it. Take me through it from the start.
Okay. Okay. Yes, more or less. It's when
Okay.
the story started a little bit earlier. So what happened is we were living in London. I spent the last 10 years before moving to Portugal in London, in a very, very big city. Before that, I was yet in another big city, and that's where we met with my husband, and we decided to move to Portugal. It's a long story, but long story short, we moved to Portugal and we decided that we're actually going to live in the countryside, in nature. We didn't want to live anymore in a big city, and we landed in a beautiful Ericeira, not far from Lisbon. For those who know, it's really beautiful town. But we landed in a year 2017, which was the year that was marked by really devastating fires in Portugal. So mm, I witnessed firsthand, not the actual fires, but the aftermath of the
Yeah.
fires. So I worked with several communities 6 months after the fires in 2018. And that's when I really somehow intuitively, consciously, semi consciously, perhaps shifted my work, my art, my approach to certain artistic endeavors from from what I was sensing of every day, just like writing poetry about the beauty of the world, to kind of finding a bit more of a core, and that core became somehow nature,
Yeah.
forest, biodiversity, community, and everything that was lacking that I saw in that moment in 2018. So for me, it all started with making a film that then I showed in many places in Portugal. And from that film started in its own turn the journey where I would be talking to people and communities at the beginning, primarily around Portugal, and trying to understand what is the root of deforestation
Yeah.
and what is the root cause of that loss of connection
Yeah.
with the forest. Just for a little note so that our listeners understand, Portugal is a number one supplier of cheap paper to the rest of the European community. So it's a very specific economic program that's been installed here since the time of dictatorship, and it's still mm, continuing. So we have vast monoculture of eucalyptus plantation, but not only, some other types of monocultures. And that contrast of seeing monocultures and remembering from my memory, from my childhood, as I was growing up in Ukraine and Russia, the forest there, the beauty of the richness of the lushness of these ecosystems, and the magic of the
Yeah.
forest. That huge gap pushed me to really shift.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, imagine I saw this empty space that I felt I wanted to understand where it comes from,
Yeah.
and then I kind of walked into that space
Yeah.
to open up the whole story and the narrative
Yeah.
for myself and then for others as well.
I think your art actually represents it so well. Is there somewhere or eternal or on your website? Yes, art. I
Yeah,
want to
you can go to
see.
the art section.
That would be smart of
Yeah,
me.
and you can see some of the actions within Eternal Forest.
Yeah.
So I actually have two websites. I have Eternal Forest website that serves
Yeah.
specifically that project because it's slowly growing into a platform that would support various creators and various forests around the world and various communities. But I also have my own website that is evgeniaemets.vision, where you have like a whole legacy of my visual art. So they kind of intersect and intertwine a little bit, but they're also quite different.
Emets that vision, right?
Yes, evgeniaemets.vision, I can share with you.
I think I have it. Because seeing your art was my first opportunity to to see you more, right? Because I've met you on an event where you were holding a ceremony that first of all was extremely moving to me, but at the same time I have to say it was the first ceremony where I was attendee.
Mhm.
So it's always gonna be powerful, no matter what, for me specifically. But afterwards, I've had a pleasure to meet you at your house, and um, then I remember, I spoke with you and I tried to impress you with my Russian, and I think I told you I welcomed you into your own house or something. But I remember seeing pieces of your art and feeling, this is the thing about interpretation of art is you are putting something out there and you're putting it up to interpretation of every single pairs of eyes that see it, right, or hear it, and so on. And that's a vulnerable space, and for you to be creative in that space, um, I'm sure you have some tools on how to navigate that, but you've managed to put me into the feeling of realization that there is something terribly wrong going in a place where it shouldn't be. For me, forest is also all of my tattoos actually are forest themed, and for me, forest is exactly what you say. It's a beautiful. It should be a beautiful piece of untouched nature, and if you come in, leave only footsteps, as you say, and I cannot. I've never been to a forest that has burnt a year prior, so I don't know how that felt. But I think you put it out well, and that's why I wanted to pull up some images.
Well, funny enough, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that because indeed, when it's all connected, right? The work with the forest, for example, the artistic trails I create when I take people on walks, when I do those ceremonies during specific times of the year or celebrations with communities,
Yeah,
or when I do my visual work or write poetry. There's no separation. This is
yeah,
all just different methodology that talks about the same thing and ultimately invites us to all reconnect.
yeah,
Actually, reconnecting is not even the right word because nothing is broken, nothing is disconnected. It's just that we kind of, our memory is a little bit erased, and but when we switch on that piece of memory, that piece of that little thread that connects us, that we always have, and it connects us always to the forest, like this mycelial thread that is connecting us to the roots of the forest. I think something lights up in the people.
Yeah.
For example, I never actually, it would be hard to even show some images of the like aftermath of the fires, because I never wanted to take those images. I never wanted to grab those photos. I never wanted to have them um, in my narrative, in my
Yeah.
story. But what I wanted to do, and what I was quite interested in those years, is, of course, there was a huge process of sadness and mourning, and being with those people and communities. You are going through this process with them, because 6 months is a very short time. And I recently visited an area called Pedrogo Grande, which is now 6 years after the fires, and the wound is there. It hasn't healed. People, and it hasn't healed not only because of time, but also because not much is being done to shift that situation. So, in a way, some of my artwork reflects some of those mm, sentiments or some of those feelings. And for example, this book that I can show, it's on
Yes,
my
a little bit
website.
closer. Yeah.
It's published in 2000. Sorry, it's published in 2022, but the artwork in this book mainly is from 2018,
Yeah.
and a lot of the work is like a black and red ink, which is also written in such a way that it kind of reflects the story of the burnt trees, but also the story of the red fire.
Yeah.
And so the red and the black, they kind of combine. So right now, in the last couple of years, I shifted to the palette of green. So I experimented a lot with the last project called Forest Time that I did here in Lisbon with the palette green, because I wanted to shift myself, invite myself to the space of healing and wholeness and imagining the forest. So, because I think it's all about imagination.
Yeah.
How can we restore places? We have to imagine those places
Yeah.
first so that we can then restore them. So, yes, I think that our our process of reconnecting and healing and patching those empty spaces, and finding those empty spaces and going deeper and discovering kind of the remaining seeds that lie dormant there, or some hidden roots. I think it always reflects in art, in writing for sure, but also in visual art, and visual art maybe in a more abstract way. So it's more in the sense of, what are you feeling when you're looking at those
Yeah.
artworks?
Yeah. But then it's also about, um, different forms of art, right? Because you're mentioning visual art, but then you're also a writer and you're also a filmmaker. So tell me about that.
I mean, I turned filmmaker in a really, yeah, unpredictable way. So I did some digital art before, but what happened is, so I don't like this whole kind of putting an artist in the box and saying, oh,
Yeah.
she's a poet, she's an artist, she's filmmaker. What happens, I think, really, I like to use the medium that makes sense for the moment. And when I was working with these communities in the area of Goiás, Serra do Lousá in Portugal, after the fires, um, I picked up film and invited somebody to work with me who also actually lost his house in the fires. He yeah, they the fire came through their village, and it was the process of healing for him, probably more than for me. And interviewing those people and letting them speak in front of the camera, asking them certain questions, I think it was a process of healing for them. They were just happy that somebody is there listening to
Yeah.
them. So I had no idea what I'm doing. I was just going in a very intuitive way, writing questions that interested me, and then putting those questions in front of people, and then composing this film into a kind of story and narrative that then I used to go back to the communities everywhere in Portugal, and question them even deeper, like what's missing,
Yeah.
what's parts of the story that's absent
Yeah.
from our consciousness, from our psyche. And I wanted to go deeper. And actually, what I discovered, thanks to that tool that I had in my hands, this film that I used as a tool to go and connect yet to more communities, is that what's absent and what's missing is the sacred relationship with the forest. That in this case, I think we actually almost lost. Like it's very, very, very deep in our psyche, in our subconsciousness, but our relationship with nature is completely of extraction, of pillaging, of consuming, of taking, and not so much giving
Yeah.
or returning
Yeah.
or reciprocity or mutuality. So I started interested in all these ecologies and set of practices that would allow me to explore the mutuality, the reciprocity, the gratitude that I experienced to just being in front of like an old tree or a beautiful, rich, natural forest with flowing water. This for me is already enough to say, well, I'm so grateful to the forest itself, but also to somebody who managed to protect
Yeah.
the place because we don't have that many places like that. And forest devastation is going on around the world, in Europe, legal cutting, illegal cutting, private land, common land, land expropriation. It just keeps going. We
Yeah.
keep losing it. And we are not restoring ecosystems fast enough
Yeah.
as we are destroying them. And I think what we are actually losing is we are losing our spiritual home.
We are
That's how
losing
I feel.
humanity. I feel like the way we're going, I believe in reincarnation. And for me, it's like, okay, this earth probably, I will do all in my power to save it, but at the same time, the what I'm seeing with the eyes of maybe just a normal person that tries to do their best, and still people my age don't have hope. Like I'm hearing people my age saying I don't want to have kids because what for, and I'm the one saying I have to have kids because it's my duty to this world that I'm gonna raise at least one child to think about this earth. Like I'm trying to protect it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, of course not. I fly a lot and I feel bad about that actually, but I want to put my life's power, the zeal in me, I want to put into the cause of protecting animals. And to protect animals, I need to protect nature, right? So it goes hand in hand. I actually wanted to ask actually if the forest, specifically the forest, I understand where the spark comes from, but I have like this. I'm so focused on oceans and ocean mammals mostly. But yeah, we are kind of going in a circle that this should become, right, this conversation of okay, we've destroyed and we've taken and we've pillaged, and um, now we need to take a certain action so we can get back to the point where maybe it was. Do you even believe we can get to the point it
No,
was?
I
No.
don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that nature is completely sorry, constantly evolving.
Yeah.
um, there is no such thing as restoring to the kind of the exactly the same place,
Yeah.
because there's so many variations, and it's a very complex system.
Yeah.
We are also very complex systems. So what we can, I think what we can hope for is that our action, with a good deal of research and with a proper knowledge and proper collaboration with specialists and scientists, and with respect to the land, also knowing what the land wants and where
Yeah.
she's going to,
Yeah.
like specific plot of the land, I'm saying, in the case of eternal forest, I think we can support the ecosystem to become more biodiverse, resilient, and stable. And for that, I think we need to think together with the land, together with that
Yeah.
forest, or together with the ocean. We can extrapolate. So, what I'm interested in is how can we learn to listen to the land in
Mm-hmm.
such a way that she can give us clues of where is she going,
Yeah.
even when the system is in imbalance and ecosystem is lost a bit its vitality. We need That's when we really need to listen, because when we speak about good forests but those that still need protection because something might happen there,
Mm.
we just really need to protect. We must basically support and encourage the local communities, so-called indigenous people that live in the proximity of this forest or settling in the proximity of the forest. We must support their work so they can
Mm-hmm.
become true guardians of this forest forever and
Yeah.
ever, hopefully through generations and through centuries. And those places that have been devastated and destroyed and depleted of the vitality and lost the seed banks, lost the biological, library that burned, let's say, or been removed
Mm.
for certain reasons, there, of course, we must do the work of restoration and regeneration.
Yeah.
And when we say restore, of course, I don't think it's, and you ask probably every scientist, every ecologist, I don't think it's possible to restore, but it's possible to see what's missing and
Mm-hmm.
how we can pinpoint those key points, like in a bit like in acupuncture.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need to leave the land alone
Yeah.
and the mycelium will start spreading. And I've just seen such an example here in Portugal where the land was left alone for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And you have mycelial network really, really becoming alive in the land. So land start restoring, recovering.
Yeah.
It's a very, very slow process. And you start seeing natural regeneration. So little saplings of trees are appearing everywhere. This is more like the process of rewilding. So
Right.
we are really trusting in the process. We're really allowing the land to go
Yeah.
where she needs to go. We are very much with respect here. Another option, we might act a little bit in a more specific way and bring, for example, and do a planting of trees.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we would be always searching for the kind of plants that are from this area, that are very well adapted, that ecosystem will receive really well, that would stay there and would provide habitats for the insects, the birds, the mammals. Because what happens now when you said about the animals, I feel it very strongly. And one day I was sitting and meditating and I asked Eternal Forest, like, tell me something, why am I so not focusing on animals?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm
Yeah.
working in a
Yeah.
very intuitive way. And Eternal Forest told me, look, there will be a point, but right now your role and the role of your collaborators is to create habitats, because in many places habitats are completely gone. There is no way for animals to enter, because even if you bring those
Yeah.
animals in certain locations, there is not enough space for them, there is not enough food for them. So Eternal Forest said in a kind of a metaphorical way that we are preparing this space, their habitats, for the future generations to do the work of then bringing
Yeah.
animal life and so on. Of course, you can also look at it from a different perspective, because when we bring keystone species
Mm-hmm.
of certain animals, they can also do the work faster.
Yeah.
And with certain conditions and in certain sizes of the lands, we can also do that kind
Yeah.
of work.
Okay, I want to do
Yeah,
that.
so very interesting. There's no like one recipe.
Yeah.
In my work, I'm interested to not follow one specific path, but I'm interested in working with ecologists, specialists, and finding partnerships, perhaps even with
Yeah.
different approaches to see what works for that specific location, for
Yeah.
that specific land, for that specific forest, and for that specific community of people as well.
Okay.
Like, what are they more inclined to do?
Yeah.
How fast they want to see the result? And how fast is always a funny question when we talk
Mm.
about old growth forest,
Mm.
because, you know,
In 100 years, you'll see something that
I
resembles
don't know.
the.
We are planting trees today that we will never sit in the shade of, but our children and our grandchildren definitely will.
Yeah. Can I ask, because one thing that really caught my attention was that, as you've mentioned, we're never going to restore, right? But at the same time, it's evolution, right? So it shouldn't actually be going to the same port as it was, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
one thing that just came over my mind is because of the way that, and I'm not an expert on this. I don't really have the physics and whatever knowledge, but we have changed the temperature of the planet everywhere, right? Everywhere around the planet, there are higher and higher temperatures. Could it be that in some places the planet and the land will transform enough to become tropical? And if yes, is that something that is worth exploring in Portugal?
Yeah, I really love this question because I think that part of the conversations about climate change they trouble me a little bit too much because I think it's not so linear. I mean, scientists are saying that climate change is not such a simple thing, and there's a whole deal of complexity there. But in the mass media, sometimes climate change is represented like, oh, the temperature is just going to rise. Well, it's not, because we have situations when they might actually drop in
Yeah,
certain places and in other rise, and in certain places it will be wetter and there will be more flooding because maybe there is no so much forest to hold the rain that arrives. So we must be kind of ready for these conditions, and certain places might become dry. But usually we must always go to the local
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
And for example, my experience in Portugal, and I think so far I traveled really north to south, east to west, worked everywhere in Portugal. My humble observation and my humble opinion is that Portugal is very varied in terms of biomes and climate, kind of climatic zones.
Yeah,
And north of Portugal is very wet, for example, and their conditions for forests much better. But also there is more forest there,
yeah,
so it's like, is it just the conditions are better to hold all this water that's going to arrive, or is it already in a way so much wetter, even with the conditions of the mountains and everything, that actually there is, because there is forest preserved there.
yeah,
Then when we arrive to the center of Portugal, all the center of Portugal is monocultures. So those eucalyptus monocultures, they've been sucking and sucking and sucking water
okay,
out of the land, and basically that water is just going away with all those cut trees and to the paper industry. So all this water is disappearing, and also because of the way those monocultures are implemented, the erosion of the land is such that any water that's falling is just going away, it's just washed away. And then the south of Portugal has another issue from my perspective. I mean, there are different areas, of course, but it's been gradually degrading because of the ecosystem that is called montado. So it's a cork oak ecosystem. It's agro production basically. So it's producing cork and then it's mixed with the wild boar and the black pig. And but this is also not a diverse system. It's just one or two trees at the maximum and some kind of
okay,
bushes. So there are studies that show that recreating, for example, just the coastal forest can increase the vitality of the ecosystem and the humidity many kilometers within the center
yeah,
of the country, because we also have mountains, etc. So again, I'm not a climate specialist. I'm reading a lot of things every day. I'm very curious to see, of course, change. The change has to happen on quite a large scale, because even if it's very necessary to create those small scale or medium scale protected forest sanctuaries everywhere in the communities. because communities have to have resilience and they have to have somewhere to go to have that experience. We also need to kind of push to work on larger scale in governance and policy making scale, and that's big work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
My work is much more focusing on trying to create a network that functions where communities will hold that role of being the stewards of their own land or land that is nearby or land that they can buy together. So it's empowering people to shift from short-term thinking to long-term, but also shift from the kind of individualistic approach to owning the land, so like
Yeah.
a private land ownership, to the commons. So we have lost commons in many places of the world. We had the big tragedy of commons worldwide, and I think the idea of commons is slowly coming back. We are learning from the indigenous people how they have been guardians of their land and
Yeah.
stewards of their land for centuries, and how they managed to preserve the biodiversity, because most of the biodiversity is with indigenous and native people around the world. And I think there is a lot to learn from them and with them. And um, I think there is a huge opportunity right now to not only like reclaim the commons, but just to create the new commons,
Yeah.
because sometimes it has to be done by other means, not just looking where the old commons were. It's a good start, but also finding and actually buying together the land and creating those new commons and creating an experiment, what it means to do this new type reforestation that is truly for the forest's sake, not
Yeah.
for extraction,
Yeah.
not for harvesting of materials, or our,
Yeah.
our purposes.
Oh no.
To,
Just last 5 words. I think it cut for our purposes, and then it cut off.
yeah, so putting the forest more into the
Yeah.
forefront and saying that, well, some places just need to be just forest, just really
Yeah.
protected. It needs to be sanctuary
Yeah.
for all wildlife, and also for us to go there to observe and witness what does it mean
Mm.
to to be present in a truly biodiverse, natural, and let's say wild or semi-wild forest.
Yeah. There is one question that I would despise myself if I didn't ask, but it could be maybe out of the scope of your specific passion, but maybe a tip. If you know, or let's put it like this. There is a girl and her name is Lydia, and she really wants to get herself fully involved in working. We all have skills. We all worked somewhere before, and those skills can be used for a cause that matters more to us. And this is sort of a situation where I am, but at the same time, I'm not just asking for myself, because I feel that there are a lot of people out there just doing a job just because it pays the bills,
Yeah.
right? But for a lot of my friends, it's kind of like, okay, am I in a dead end job? Is this it forever? And will I ever be excited to close a project or like to start something new? So from this perspective, because you've done it, and also you've seen people probably around you doing it, how would you say, yeah, give us tips?
Wow. This is such a hard question. So I'll be very honest with you and with our listeners and with everybody young who has energy. I think for me, it's like this. I'm actually getting really emotional answering this question. Mm,
I appreciate that so much that you're able to feel this.
yeah, I would say in such a way that I think that this is our story.
Yeah.
Um, I think we really have to look very seriously within
Yeah.
ourselves, within our beings, and ask ourselves where do we belong
Mm-hmm.
and who we are. and keep asking this question. And also, I have this poem that starts, where do I end? Where do you begin? And this is the land asking humans. So where is the that line that separates my being, my being as a human, and the being of the land that I'm living on right now, or living with right now,
Yeah.
or any other land, or the whole world, or that forest nearby that is currently being cut, or the body of the river, or the plants that are growing outside of my house. And how do we make sense of this liminal space in between? And how do we open up the space for a possibility of seeing that it is one continuity, it is one being, we are not
Yeah.
separate. Of course, everybody says, oh, we are not separate from each other, oh, we are not separate from nature, but what does it actually mean? So I think when we start feeling that we are con- a continuity, we are continuous from the land, we are continuous from the forest, we are extension and they are extension of us. And the beings that live there, it's their home, but it's also our home. We just made a choice to get out of this home.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we went on this very big journey very far away across the oceans,
Yeah.
and we made all these journeys, and then we moved the plants around the world, and then we moved the materials, the rocks, and the animals. We moved
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
like we want. But the fact that we left our home doesn't mean that the home left us.
Yeah.
The home is still within us. And so I would say it's our duty to protect it, because we're actually protecting
Yeah.
ourselves. Because let's go back for a moment to that idea of you wanting to bring a human into this world. I totally support you, because I think that regardless of everyone is saying that there are too many people in the world, I don't trust that idea. And I think that this idea is just perpetuated by the capitalist system that wants us to believe that we don't belong here, that we are like some kind of virus on the body of the land. No, we are not. We are real, intrinsic part of that world, and we totally belong here.
Yeah.
Our body is made out of all these different
Stardust.
chemical compositions and water,
Yeah.
and it's soil and water and fire and air, and we function with the elements that all the life functions with. So we are totally not different. So I was really impressed when I was doing my latest project in Lisbon, and I was researching, and I was working with plants, with several master plants, and my process with the plants was asking them their messages that they want to pass to the people. They want to communicate something. And I was sitting with this plant that is called taro. So it's a plant that is in yam. So it's a plant that grows in water with a lot of humidity, originally from, I think, South Asia, but it was moved around the world to many places. It became a really sacred plant and a staple food in Hawaii. Then it moved elsewhere. It's in Azores. You find it everywhere, and it was in tropical botanical garden in Lisbon.
I'm so sorry. I'll just pause you. I really wanted to pull up like a quickly a picture of the plant, but I found some like like airline company.
I think we can show it to the people later. We
Yeah.
can like make a link or something. And I asked this plant like, "What's your message to me?" And this plant said, "Well, one of my messages to you is that we have the same root, you and us, so humans and
Yeah.
plants."
Yeah.
And it is true. If you
Yeah.
start looking at the evolution, this is
Yeah.
how we evolved. We have the same root, part of our genes, we share genes, no? So okay, going back to this, what's my tip? I think we really need to like wake up to dream, wake
Yeah.
up to dream actively.
Yeah.
And that active dreaming is not like, oh, I'm just gonna like sleep, continue sleeping and dream about something. No, It's like, how do we dream this future world?
Yeah, yeah, because you said it before. Before it's reality, it's an idea.
It's an
You
idea.
said it yourself.
It's imagination. If
Yeah.
we lack our if the system tells us forget your imagination and go work 9 to 5, most of people will be like, oh, but I don't have time for imagination. But no, this is your right.
Yeah.
Your right is to have imagination, to have good quality of life, clean water, good land, grow food, enjoy nature, wild nature, make babies. But also, your right is to choose all these different steps in your life where you want to take it. And that active dreaming for me is the step one of really waking up. There's nothing esoteric about it. There's nothing
Yeah.
new age about it.
Yeah.
It's just really waking up to the fact that we are humans, we are animals, we are plants, we are the body of the land, and we are breathing, expanding and contracting together with the planet
Yeah.
Earth. We're earthlings, we belong here. So I think that, of course, I'm not inviting everybody to just quit their job today, but I think definitely looking around in your
Yeah.
vicinity, what kind of projects are people doing, what's in your community, what's the need. Maybe there is like an abandoned garden that you could just get started with your community. If you're living in an urban place, if you're living in a rural place, what can you do with with your people? What can you get started that will make it more exciting in 10 years time, and it will be like, wow, we achieved this together. I think that one of the powers that I see that is re-emerging right now, that we kind of lost or gave away a little bit, is the power of the community. And this is where one of the values of eternal forest comes in. I think alone we are not much. We are something. There are some geniuses, and I think each of us is a genius if we kind of
Yeah.
go
I
back
agree.
to our imagination and saying, no, I can actually do anything. Of course, we have limited time in the world and limited energy and all of that, and kind of system keeps stealing our energy all the time, 24/7. But we are not giving it away just like that. So we are much more when we connect with yet another person, and then yet another person, and yet another person. And what do? We make a circle. So probably if you were at one of my ceremonies, we did a circle.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I put people in circles and I say, listen, this is the most powerful shape and form that we have as human beings. And when we are in the circle, we can do anything. Of course, we have to respect each other. It has to be, sharing the voices and bringing all the voices together in an equal way. And the way of circle is also something to remember and learn, because we kind of forgot how to be together. But just simply doing that, like getting in the circle and saying, like, what do we want to create here? What is trying to emerge? What is the land trying to tell us? What are we listening to? What are we hearing? And then contributing, and just making, even if you have just 1 hour per week, you can already do a lot.
Yeah.
But to do something alone and then do something together, so shift something in your life and then shift something in the life of your community. And I think that's huge, because cumulative effects of working together is much more than the effect of, let's say, 10 single people,
Yeah. 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 That's true. That's true.
trying to walk the same path.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And I do understand it's a personal story, and I very much loved when you were talking about going within and going to your roots and understanding your own connection to the oneness that we all, I hope, that we all strive to feel one day, and some of us already do. And then, I really like to talk in this sense because I think it expands in a way how I used to think, and at the same time complements how I always used to believe. And there are different aspects of whether it comes to art or presentation of yourself, presentation of your imagination into the reality, and then in the common, like, imagine how much power we can have together if, I mean, I'm always boasting about, like, okay, yeah, I did this, I did that, and it's always, I'm kind of joking with my scene here on Twitch that, yeah, I'm manifesting whatever, but it is what it is, because I put a
It
goal
is.
on my wall and I see it every day. I have things around my computer right now, and then those things are happening because, of course, I'm making conscious and maybe also subconscious decisions towards that goal,
Yeah.
and I'm just by myself, so we can definitely do it, as a group.
Yes,
We can
exactly.
do a lot, I think. I do want to be aware of your time because I know that although I'm sure you would love to spend hours and hours with us, I know that your time is a little bit more strict. So I wanted to actually offer you Evgenia. How do
Mhm.
you pronounce the most correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Evgenia. Okay.
Mhm.
I Before I was thinking it Eugenia, no, Evgenia, no, Evgenia.
Well done.
Is there a message that you would like to share? Now, if we have a few minutes before you really have to
Mhm.
leave us, and if there's anything,
Yes, so I would love to share the message of hope, togetherness, and definitely the effort of coming together. And probably that would be a good time also to share invitation to Eternal Forest Camp at the Gathering of Tribes. We could maybe put the links below this video. So, Gathering of Tribes, just very, very briefly, is gonna be happening this year in Portugal in September. Is the Gathering for Regenerative Culture. My partner is organizing it. We are bringing everyone who is working in regenerative space, businesses, organizations, communities, communications, artists, and so on. People working with the land, of course. And the Eternal Forest will be creating our own camp with people who have been around the project for some time, but also new people. We're going to be very open to anybody to join because Eternal Forest is building a network around the world. So I'm very much welcoming newcomers. I'm very much welcoming practitioners who do some kind of work with ecology of the forest. And we will be primarily focusing on, we'll be spending our time between thinking how do we bring eternal forest into materialization, into how do we manifest it. So there's a list of questions I proposed, and we're gonna launch soon our regular meetings until September. And then the second part of the time, we will weave certain practices and experiences and art, and it's a really really beautiful place. We're staying pretty much in the forest with running water and streams, and summer and September in Portugal is very beautiful. So I'm inviting everybody to have a look at this link we're going to share. It's a PDF, and we have a form there that if somebody wants to join that specific camp, you could fill in the form and we'll reach out to you. And if you just want to join Gathering of Tribes, you still have to choose a camp. So whichever way you end up there, you'll have to kind of be part of some kind of
yeah,
organization or some part of the congregation community of people. And probably that's what I wanted to share with you because that's like the next big thing
yeah,
that we are doing, weaving the space, weaving the magic of the forest together, and bringing more people to collaborate. So yeah,
yeah,
and I
and
look forward to seeing you there.
yeah, I'm so excited to be there. And the thing is, I don't currently have a camp. I was thinking about starting my own, but then I would feel bad if nobody showed up. So I feel safer joining someone. I would love to join the Eternal Forest camp.
Yes,
Is
you're
open for
welcome.
everyone? Is there like a limit of how many people can join one camp?
No, no,
Okay.
there is no limit, of
Okay,
course.
okay, okay. Then I will consider it. Thank you so
Amazing.
much. I have a friend, his name is Brian, and he's going to be playing music on Gathering of Tribes, but I don't know if he's joining somebody else's camp or if he's also looking for a camp. But
Okay, so you
yeah.
can ask him.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
all of
you.
your time. It's been a pleasure to have you, honestly. I feel that sometimes I maybe surprise people or put them on the spot by how much I express my admiration, but I felt very warm welcome from you when I first met you already. And that welcome made me curious enough to ask more. And I'm so excited that we've had this opportunity now and hope there's going to be many in the future.
Thank you, Lydia. Wonderful. And thanks so much for giving this opportunity to share. I'm always happy to share. And of course, let's just say that if somebody really feels called, they want to know more, they want to have a call with me, maybe they have a piece of land somewhere in the world
Yeah.
where they're like, well, I think we can create an eternal forest sanctuary. Just reach out to
Yeah.
me. We can put a contact there through the website. They can
Yeah.
do it. And yeah, we can talk.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Evgenia.
You have a good day.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, wait a second. That was it. What do you think? This is so funny because when it comes to calls, I'm always like, wait, can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me. Can you hear anything else? No. But you shouldn't. Okay, give me a second. I'm wondering if I should stop the. I'll stop the recording now. So whoever is editing this, thank you for doing that. Okay, and then I'll also save the recording of the full stream.